Good morning, everybody. We're talking this morning about working with parents and other fans to promote better behavior without getting yourself in trouble or in a situation you don't want to be in. At least that's our goal. I'm going to set my clock so I make sure we stay on time because nobody likes to go over. So we're just going to do it that way. Let's go through and everybody introduce yourself for a moment and kind of where you fit into the sports landscape. I'll let you use my mic here.
Okay. Hi, I'm Khristen Vanderwey. I played tennis, growing up playing tennis. I played college tennis, I played professional tennis. I've coached juniors, I've coached adults. I have 4 daughters, all 4 of them were in club sports, volleyball, soccer. Took about 20 years off, and then now I'm coaching at the high school that my girls are at, and I have seen such a horrible change in parents' behavior and sitting on the sidelines, and I just want to help you guys figure out how we can make this better, because it's devastating for the athletes, not just us, but the athletes are really suffering. So I'm here to just give what I can to help fix this problem.
Great. Alva?
I'm Alva Amaker from Prince George's County, Maryland. I am a parent of athletes. I was an athlete growing up, so I'm 8 years old. I started coaching in 1994, volleyball and softball. I have a youth organization, the community sports. I'm an athletic director, became for 15 years, was an official for about 8 years, and I do pretty much as a consultant, I do risk management in the sports realm. After seeing what we as athletic directors are required to do, what our administrators let us do, and all of the nuances that go into that, some of it, there's so many contributory factors to where we are. You know, we tend to blame here, but everybody has a role in this scope to be able to fix the current situation. And that is where I really think about the culture that we're in. It's a mindset, as to where we are, and that is where I want to put my teeth into and ensure that we kind of come up with some real solutions to that problem that we have currently right now.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Hi everyone, my name is Jennifer Beck, and I am a sports broadcaster from Lima, Ohio. I do play-by-play, sideline reporting, I shoot highlights, so I have been in the middle of the fans, I've been in front of the fans, I've been behind the fans, but I'm also a sports parent. My youngest 2 daughters are now college athletes. They were multi-sport athletes in high school, and I can tell you which sports were calm, which sports had a lot of intensity and a lot of emotion. But all in all, we all know sports is not going away. We don't want sports to go away. And we all know that the reality of what sports gives to our kids is so much bigger than what they just do on that playing field. So I stand in agreement with everybody that for the best of the kids, we want to find a solution so that they can continue to not only achieve athletically, but emotionally, spiritually, mentally, they can achieve everything that sports will offer them.
Good morning, everybody. My name is John Varlas. I am with the Daily Memphian newspaper in Memphis, Tennessee. It's an online-only publication that we started in 2019, and thankfully, knock on wood, it's going really well. I have covered high school sports as my primary beat since 2010. All high school sports, everything from football, all the way down to, well, I don't want to say down, but everything from football to lacrosse and everything in between. And I think like the ladies here as well, I've seen, lots of things, lots of disturbing trends over the years since I've been doing this. And the reason I wanted to get involved with this today was to, get with other smart people, other people who have seen things, other people who have experienced things, and, hopefully spark a conversation and try to, make things better, like Jennifer said, for our kids. I think so many times we have lost sight of the goals of what high school sports is supposed to be, and I think that's what, one of the things that this summit is trying to do is keep what's actually important in the forefront, and, hopefully we can spark some conversation today and the rest of today and tomorrow and do that.
Don't hand that mic back yet, John. Let's start with you. You talk about disturbing trends that you've seen throughout your career, and I really love that you focused on high school sports because you're kind of the expert as you have been in that realm. What are some of the disturbing trends that you've seen?
Well, I think from a parent standpoint, and Anne-Marie, I think you kind of touched on it last night with some of the things that you've seen from parents. I think the number one thing is what I see is these parents have outsized expectations of their children and their ability. You know, there's only one LeBron James, there's only one Serena Williams, there's only one Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. Your kid is, and I understand, you know, a lot of these parents invest a lot of money, they invest a lot of time, they invest blood, sweat, tears, you know, driving every weekend. I understand that. I'm not a parent myself, but, you know, I've talked to enough parents and I know what the investment is. But we have to just recognize the fact, and I think we as, you know, as leaders in this industry have to find a way to come across the message that, you know, the ultimate goal is not going to be professional sports for, you know, 99.9% of these kids. The ultimate goal is not going to be a college scholarship for the vast majority of these kids. So let's reframe that. What is the ultimate goal going to be? You know, and that's to have fun. That's to make lasting relationships. That's to build, you know, relationships with your teammates. Anne-Marie, like what your son does. You know, why is a team so important? Why is structure so important? Why is being in that concept of a framework of a team and a coach and, you know, bus rides and you know, just practices and all those things that you do together to bond with, you know, other boys and girls on your team. You know, why are those things important? Why are they beneficial? And I think, you know, if we can do a better job communicating that as a message to parents and, you know, kind of tempering down the expectations a little bit, I think, you know, a lot of these behavior problems might go away if we, you know, start showing different ways to kind of frame the expectations.
Well, so I agree, and everybody here agrees, but let's dig into it since we've got the summit. How do we get this message to the parents that their investment is not due to a financial return, their investment is in the human? How are we going to message that to people? Because we all agree.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's tough because when you have that investment, you want to see a tangible return to it, and I think it's just education. I think it's just ways to you know, get the message out there. You know, maybe represent it graphically on a, you know, with you know, with visual images and things of that nature, to like, okay, here's the universe of athletes. Here's what it looks like. Here's what a successful athlete, you know, looks like. You know, some type of way to visualize it graphically or present it in a way to where it just resonates with people and register somehow that, hey, you know, the odds of you raising a professional athlete are infinitesimally small, but there's other ways to have fun and go about it and be successful at it and get something positive out of it. We just have to find a way to show and make it click somehow.
Khristen, you've had a lot of experience with some poorly behaved parents. She was a professional tennis player, as Khristen mentioned, and so give us some of your experience, first of all, when you were in pro tennis or as you were approaching pro tennis, in terms of what you saw with parents.
Well, I grew up in Florida, which was like the tennis capital. And so we had a lot of high profile players around and the parents were pretty intense. So I was used to seeing all that. The parents would be berating the players behind the fence, and there were no boundaries. The coaches kind of fed into it, and I think the coaches allow the parents to act like that. And then I come, you know, up here to Arizona, or Indiana, but in Arizona, and I'm seeing the coaches. It's more about the coaches and the ego of the coaches and looking at the players as indispensable. And I'm seeing these parents who are looking at these kids looking at the coaches that are looking at the players like they're indispensable.
They're dispensable?
Dispensable, yeah, thank you. So I feel like the coaches need to step up. And so when I was growing up in Florida, you know, it was all about the coaches and it was more about them than their players. So it's more about the ego.
And let me interrupt you for this. Just the players, she's not going to say the names, but they're players you know. Big time players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've seen, you know, can I talk about examples with
yeah.
So for instance, I had one high profile player, and her dad was very prominent, and he was on the court with her all the time. We were, Florida State Finals is a time where all the players can get together, all the best players, and they have barbecues at night. Everyone gets together and you have your matches in the morning. And this particular player wasn't playing until like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The rest of us were playing at like 8 in the morning because she had a bye. And we had a great time because we never really get to see her because she's constantly with her dad. And I remember just being in the locker room. I think this girl's 14, so I was probably 13 years old. And she was having so much fun sitting with dinner with us. And then we walked into the locker room and we were just splashing water and having fun. And her dad comes busting into the room and grabs her by the arm and says, "You have a match tomorrow," and then pulls her right away. And the rest of us were like, we're just having fun. I think when you look at it as the parents are looking at it as investment, and when you have a parent that's a coach, that's a whole nother thing. My kids didn't play tennis for that reason. I couldn't separate. So my kids played different sports. But I think that the parents need to just back off. I think the coaches need to also be in lockstep with the coaches need to help the parents understand that it's not about them, and the coaches also need to understand that it's not about them. And so I think when you have a parent and a coach together, that's like a double whammy.
So we hear that parents need to be, given some help adjusting their expectations, and the coaches at times need to understand as well that it's still not about them, the win-loss record. And again, when we're talking about education-based athletics, it's tricky, right? Because sometimes you were an AD, Alva. Sometimes, in the past it was always your coach was also the math teacher. And, it isn't necessarily the case all the time anymore where coaches are coaches and they're looking at the win-loss there. So, Alva, as a former AD, although you can speak to any topic with your resume, I'm wondering what you've seen and what your thoughts are. You have a lot of kind of potential solutions, I know, from our previous discussion, so have at it.
Okay, from the athletic administrator side, right now as I look at the current trend, we don't talk enough, and as parents come into our programs, about the fact everybody's like, money. It's free pretty much to play high school sports. So what you do outside of here has nothing to do with the tryouts that start by the national, state, government day for your state association. So when you say money, it's no money to come and try out for your high school sport. And that point, and the players have to be able to understand that as well. And so that whole cost factor, I try to tell parents, get that out your head, because that doesn't govern here, And from there, in instituting what is education-based athletics, the level of entitlement that you think you have, because when you play a sport in club, you feel like, okay, I paid my money, so my child is expected to have playing time. Well, you don't pay your money here. Your value comes with your student being a student athlete. Therefore, they must perform their bill that they got to pay is their academic progress and being academically eligible, which is something that they don't have a clue about coming into high school. Because in the youth side, there's no bridge that really says how to matriculate through this process. So I believe in the first part, we have to really begin to build relationships with the youth sports world, because they do their own thing. They're their own funnel. But though that funnel feeds into our funnel, then our funnel feeds into the collegiate funnel. But we haven't bridged the gaps between all of those areas. And so the behaviors don't get checked. And high school coaches those that coach both sides, the club world and high school world, bring some of those principles in. And so when I would hire coaches, I would of course do my background check and all that good stuff. And then I would listen to them and ask them real questions. I know you're gonna say all the great stuff. Well, I'm gonna have a study hall. I'm gonna do all the good things like, yeah, I'll bitch my player if he left school early. Don't tell me that story, because that's not gonna happen. And so we really have to, be willing to, as athletic administrators, be willing to, hold our coaches to the fire when they will allow things within the culture of their team and within the program to not be welcoming, would not be something that is conducive to the overall well-being of the team and of individuals. And that whole respect of person has got to go away.
Let me ask a question. What about everybody who's worried about their job, right? Because, you know, they could say, oh, I'm going to bench this player. It depends on how good they are, maybe, right? Like, if they're not very good, you're benched. You have not been doing your work. But if they're great, you bench the great player. You don't win, you're worried, some parents call for your head. Kind of, how do you, as an athletic administrator, kind of balance that out and say, if you follow the rules, I've got your back? Because I feel like potentially a lot of people, athletic administrators as well, are worried about losing their job because the parental pressure is so incredible. I mean, I saw that on my own son's team a couple of years ago where they went after the coach, trying to get the coach fired, who was there for 25 years, which they did not, by the way.
And I would say, if I could take from my behavior, and I am the worst loser ever. I don't play checkers, because I love to win. However, in the ever ask about what is the win? What are we looking? What's the outcome beyond the W's? Because there are going to be teams that are going to be better than us. But what is it that you went from beginning to end? What is the progress? What are our markers? What are our goals that we're trying to accomplish? You can't say, oh, I want to win a state championship. That's always the goal. That's always the goal, because that's the carrot at the end for high school sport, to win the state. To be able to have our athletes be able to compete and do the best that they can and get some awards, MVP, most improved, all those things is great. However, what are those markers along the way that says that we are making the proper progress as an individual athlete and as a team as a whole? And if you're building the right culture, no administrator, unless they just don't understand what the role of high school athletics is, will fire a coach or a program or athletic director that has a culture that is building and having happy students. And the parents that don't know how to behave, the structure for them would be, do we even monitor those parents or have a list of those parents that have problems? And if we do we ever bring them in? People say, oh, just talk to them about the code of ethics or, respect the game. They know it. But then what is it in them that don't allow them to follow it?
The return on their investment. There's
no investment. You don't even have to pick them up. Once they're in the school building, you don't have to come back until whatever time practice is over. So what is your investment at this time other than they get them up and get them on the bus in the morning?
Right, but as you said, they don't differentiate between the money they pay for club and private lessons and all that.
That part right there is where the first is going to be the first step in getting them to separate the two, because the club world is where the real recruitment happens.
Yeah.
We know that. But right now, let this be the place where they just enjoy their journey of being an athlete. Because after this is over, the postseason is going to be where they're going to grind. It's not going to be happy, because it's going to be such a task of always trying to be, I got to be the best. I got to be, the pressure is on. The high school part is, let my teammates see me. Let my classmates see me. Yeah. My girlfriend see me, boyfriend see me, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, we agree. We all agree. It's just a matter of getting it. Now, Jennifer, you've got a unique perspective in that physically, right, when you're reporting, you're actually right between the parents and the players. And you've talked to the players. What are you learning from them, or what are you experiencing when you're on the field about what's coming towards the players in terms of actions and words?
Well, the players want to play. And when you talk to the players, at least I did, I have 3 college athletes living in my home right now, all did the high school route. And I surveyed them before I came here. I said, what are the problems? Is it the officials? Is it just the general fan? Now the number 1 problem is the parents, and the number 2 problem are the coaches. That is the message that was given to me. Of course, 2 of the college athletes living in my home are my own children, so they're telling me the parents are the problems. And I admit, I've been there. I had the investment. I did all that. But as a sports broadcaster, I get to see it from the outside, and I get to watch what happens, and to hear the words that come out of the mouths of the parents to the officials is horrendous. Horrendous. I mean, I am shocked by some of the things I hear, and I'm thinking, do you have any idea that I have that sound on my camera right now? And this is going on our show tonight, and what you just said, I could broadcast that huge. But they're so focused internally on getting that win that I think they forget the big, big picture of it. And what I'm hearing everybody say is there's a messaging situation that we have. We got to get to the root of the problem on why the parents are even doing this to begin with. Why did me, as a person, sit in my daughter's tennis match and get up and walk out because I couldn't stand the way she was playing? I got to figure out my root of the problem, because that's not being a good parent. That is not the way it needs to be. So, you know, I think about the opportunities that we have to start talking to the parents about their behavior. You have to stop the parents from their busy lives. You have to stop them from doing all the things they're doing and get their attention. Marketing statistics will tell you that you have to message at least 3 times within 36 hours to even get them to hear what you want to say for the first time. So you have to overdo this and just remind them over and over again of their expectations and what you expect out of them. Once you are tired of it, then you might start seeing a change. But you know what? I mentioned that my kids are college athletes, so I've gone through the recruiting process. Only 2% of athletes make it to college. That's not going to change parents trying to get their kids there. They're still going to try everything. They're still putting the investment in. They're still doing it all. But I'll never forget what a lacrosse coach said to my daughter when he was giving her an offer. He said, one of the reasons I'm recruiting you is because I met your family, and I see what your parents are like, and I see what your sister is like, and I can tell what kind of support you're going to have if you're on my team. So that's what I want to tell these parents. Your attitude on that sidelines is going to have an impact on your kids and might be a make or break when it comes to that scholarship. We gotta get it together.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I will say that there was a parent within our sphere who, before the child was even eligible to be recruited as a sophomore, they kept pressuring the coach, hey, can you call this college coach, national championship coach, can you call him, make sure, can you? Well, eventually the high school coach and the college coach talked about something else. And the college coach said, by the way, this parent called me in the middle of the season, national championship, about her son who I can't recruit. Just so you know, there's 0 chance I'm recruiting that kid. I know he's 6'10", he's really good, I don't want him. Because he didn't want the family. And that kid, who probably has no idea now, lost his chance at his dream school. And it was because of the parents. So you hit something really important. We all agree on the problem. Let's start talking solutions. So when you're saying you need to be able to tell the parents, who's the you? Who is the you? Like, how do we get to those parents? I love messaging 3 times in 36 hours. How do we do that?
Well, and I don't want to take all the time because I know everybody's got thoughts, but I think one point we start out with the athletic directors. I don't know what it's like in all of your states and what you have to do, but in my school, I had a responsibility to attend a sports meeting in the fall, in the winter, and the spring. Sure. I hated the meeting. I went to it. I have seen that AED video so many times at this point. I think I probably should have a degree in it. But you know what I never heard about? I never heard about sportsmanship in this meeting. I heard about grades. I heard about transfer rules. I heard about, a little bit about food. I heard about sports practices. But I attended 17 of these meetings in the course of my children's high school career. I don't ever remember hearing about sportsmanship. And that's only one meeting, but it's a touch point. And we got to think about touch points. I don't know if it was this morning or yesterday, but someone mentioned you can't just put a banner in the gymnasium and say, we're a sportsmanship approved school. That's not a touch point. We have to have physical touch points. When I think about my kids, I'll make this quick because that's what you're going to talk. But when I think about my kids' sports coaches, and they did 7 different sports in high school, the one that sticks out to me the most is my daughter's softball coach. He never referred to the students other than calling them student athletes. Every single time they were student athletes. He quizzed the kids on current events. That was one of his requirements. They had to know what was going on in the world. And he pushed this, and he brought us parents in for a special meeting. It was in the weight room, it was in our element, but it was to remind us of how we can help our children succeed. And sportsmanship, the whole realm, the education was in. Of all the coaches, 7 teams, multiple coaches, that's the one I remember the most. The guy who said, my kids are student athletes, they're athletes first, they are young ladies, and then we'll go out and win the game.
We have a coach right here in Khristen. What's your preseason protocol and your communication with the parents like?
So when I started at this job at Xavier, the environment with the players was very competitive. And they were always, top 3 in the state, winning states. When I came in, because I grew up playing tennis, and tennis is an extremely lonely sport, so playing in college tennis, it was like, oh my gosh, I want these girls to experience that. I want the team camaraderie. So I did a lot of team building in the very beginning. I brought JV and varsity together rather than separating varsity and JV. And the biggest thing is I followed through on the consequences. So I had a player who was number 2 for our team, and her attitude was horrible. In tryouts, I had one of the players come up to me and give me the balls, and she goes, I know she's a good player, but she's really mean, and she's crying. And she was crying to me. So I pulled her aside, because I used to have a horrible attitude in juniors. So I pulled her aside and I said, hey, what's going on? And she basically grew up in this environment in Arizona that I did in Florida, where the coaches would just banter back and forth. So that's just all she knew. And I said, well, that's not going to work here. So she had her second or third day of tryouts. She did better with her attitude. However, she made the team. She was injured, so she was off for a while. When she came back, her attitude was horrible again. So one time I said, you're off the court, and everyone saw her go off the court. Then that afternoon I said, you need to have a meeting with me, I'll see you tomorrow. So I went to the school the next day, and she didn't show up for the meeting. And she sent me an email and said, sorry, I had science club or something. And then she said, so by the way, I can play both singles and doubles tomorrow. And we were playing the number 1 team in the state. And I said, well, you're not playing. And she did some pretty things that got her in a lot of trouble, but I kicked her off the team. And I got a lot of slack from the mom saying, the only reason she's at Xavier was to play tennis. And I said, I don't think your daughter really wants to play tennis. So I asked, asked this player, I said, do you even want to be here? Your attitude, and her attitude just brings everyone down. The energy just goes right down. Well, I'll tell you that this team, when I had the banquet, we didn't win state. We came in 3rd. This team, they are like best friends now. They do lunch together, they do dinner together, all on their own. And I have heard from many people that it was never like that. There are girls coming out of their shells. Girls who wouldn't even look anybody in the eye are now the ones that are being the spirit captains, because I'm trying to create a safe environment for them, like what you were saying. It's like, you want this to be a place where they're going to have fun and play. The club life is completely different. It's intense, it's lonely, it's harsh. And so that was a huge change for me. And at the end of the year at the banquet, I had one mom stand up and say, this is my 3rd daughter going through at this program. And she said, I have never seen, I can't believe my daughter wants to go have lunch with her teammates. It's unbelievable. So for me, that's winning. And I remember in states, the girls they came up to me in the middle of or in between games, and they were shaking, and I go, why are you shaking? It was state, and it was tight, it was very tight, and I said, I do not care if you win or lose this. I really do not care. I just go out there and play. It does not matter. So I think that made a huge difference. So now I know, regardless, I know they're going to do much better next year, because they have that. Now we're going to start next year, and they're going to have this team camaraderie, and I mean, that's the ultimate goal for me. But then once they have that, they're going to get better. They're going to, encourage to encourage each other and be teammates, and the environment's just going to get better and better as it goes along.
What about the parents? What's your conversation with the parents?
So there was this one during state. We had one father who got out of hand, and the problem is he took the bait from the other dad. It was the finals, So, and he was blaming on taking the bait, but I didn't hear what had happened. The coach had told me, well, he had said something to one of the players. I hadn't known that. Now, if I had known that he'd said something to one of the players, I would have taken him off right away. There was no, I have zero tolerance for it. This father, this poor daughter, his daughter wasn't even on the court, said he wanted to take it out in the parking lot with the guy that was instigating him. His daughter was mortified, crying, because people get it on video. Everything's on camera now, everything gets looked up. She was terrified that someone was gonna upload the video. Well, she played the next day, and she was a wreck. She was shaking all the time, and anytime anyone would cheer for her opponent, they were thinking that they were yelling at her, and she was taking all this shame, her dad's shame, and she couldn't play. Now, I didn't know that, I was watching other courts, I wasn't there the whole time. If I had known how bad it was, I would have taken her off the court and said it's not worth it. But as far as the parent, I sat him down and said, this is not acceptable. I told him, because we were in the middle of states, I said, we're gonna let you come watch, but you have to stand back. And I wish I would have just said, you can't come at all. I mean, that's, what I'm learning. It's like, I made so many, it was my first year coaching, and I wanted to make sure I was not going overboard. By getting rid of the number 2 player, which would basically cost us state, I thought that was, I wish I would have done more, but the whole code of conduct thing, I think it's all about following through. You just have to follow through. And so I need to come up with something when I have my meeting with this dad, because his daughter is going to be a senior. I need to come up with something that will get through to him and get through to everybody else if this is not tolerable. And I'm not quite sure how to do it yet, but I'm hoping I can learn through here. But I think follow through is the number 1 thing.
Alva, as an administrator, what can that conversation be? How can you help Khristen find a way to message it to parents and mean it and be able to follow through?
From coach to parent?
Yeah, from coach to parent, or also from administrator to parent.
Okay.
Pre-season, before the problems happen.
Pre-season, currently, I would think that, first of all, the meeting would be, okay, now parents will go through a training. Let them look at some of the videos that we watch and say, okay, and let's talk that through. What is the mindset? What do you see? Where are you in this realm? Are you sitting by watching that individual? Because the key thing is you don't see how you're acting until it's replayed back to you, the man in the mirror. So are you the man in the mirror when you're watching this particular video? Now,
let me interrupt for a second because I want to make sure that we have the discussion. We see the videos, we sign the contracts. How does that discussion happen?
So that discussion after that will be you demonstrating. Because it almost gets to a point for me, you have to call it out. And directly, we're all in here, and you see it, you know it, and we become bystanders. And so we're not going to be bystanders anymore. Mr. Simmons, this is you. Paul, Jackie, we do a coaching session. You call out the player for not making a play. We're calling out parents for doing inappropriate behavior.
In a general meeting?
No, like say in a parent meeting.
Right.
In a parent meeting. Yeah, because all of us see it already.
Right.
So it's not like it's hidden. It's not like it's a secret and we're trying to embarrass anybody. Because you're not trying to, you're upstaging anybody. You're upstaging your child, you're upstaging the coach, you're upstaging the official. So now obviously you want to be seen. So let's see it all the way. But not in a derogatory way, but it's more about, how do we get past this? How do we get past it? So watching the man in the mirror and having the conversations. We're going to sign the contract. Now we understand the contract. Let's have the back and forth with the contract. Why don't we? Because again, until people realize they're not doing certain things, and that now from administrator, I have the support of the administrator. I will always tell my principals, at least come in, show your face in the meeting, to let them know that it's not like, when Coach Amaker says something, then, I'm just going to go to the principal. No, we're all in this together. And so until we really mark that down, so again, the follow through has to be it. You have a sanctions list. You got a list within your building that will follow, I guess I would say even a state, or that will be high school level, your jurisdiction for your area, in the county that you're in. What is it that you all have put in place? That will be something that will go up to the state. Because again, parents, when they get angry, they fire up the line. But that same line, somebody in that line, the consistency and continuity in that line has to be the same.
Yeah.
And so as that communication comes down, at least right now, we're gonna start in our building, and right here, we're not gonna do this, this is what you do, this is what we're not gonna do, this is our standard of behavior, these are the consequences. And you might you might wanna give your own, infraction card. You got this infraction, okay, you're suspended for a game. The key thing is not to have to pull the child out.
Yeah.
Because that is the end result. And I heard that yesterday, people have pulled their kid out. That's like the worst thing ever to feel as a coach and as an administrator, have to be like, we're gonna give it, you have to protect the whole for the one sometimes.
Let me ask some of the executive directors here, Tom, Ron, Lauren, Doug, what can be done from the state? Is it possible from the state to have something that is a blanket message in terms of a list of sanctions? Is that possible? Ron and Tom looking at each other.
Yes, we have sportsmanship sanctions for players, for coaches, for parents. I think a lot of our states, it comes down to, how does that get messaged to the people at the school sites that when you enforce it, we're going to support you. I think that's the key, is showing that they're going to do it at the site level. Because having the rules only half the battle, or not even half. The majority of the battle is, are they willing to enforce it then and there? And don't get me wrong, I get it from school administrators' positions. Sometimes they're just very nervous about enforcing it because of the reaction they get today versus years ago.
The reaction they get from whom?
From the parent. I mean, they're worried about their safety a lot of times.
Yeah. They're worried about their safety. And so, how can you make the administrators at the school level feel safer? How can you do that? How can you make them feel safer so that they know they have the teeth and the backup to be able to do this? What can be done?
I'm not going to give away our session at 2:30. I think you're going to hear 2 o'clock. I think you're going to hear a lot of the resources from people about just that. What are the resources we're providing so that they feel they have the tools necessary to do it?
Tom, what's the biggest problem you see or hear in your state relating to parents?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, you four, for participating. I appreciate your perspective, the perspective that you bring from each of your backgrounds. The reality is that we are trying to fix in a 6-week, 8-week, 12-week season what has taken 12 years to develop, right? These folks have developed these behaviors and have not been sanctioned, so to speak. And we all know that rules without consequences are just suggestions, right? So we can preach to them all we want in our parent meetings, and if nothing's going to happen, then then they're not going to buy it. So I think for us, what I hoped to get out of this, and I'm looking forward to not only your session, Ron, but everybody's, is to go back and be able to provide to our member schools some model practices. So we can say, here are things that make a difference. And these are things that we recommend. These are guidelines that we have. And if we can do that, I feel like that this is going to be valuable. But again, we are battling something that we didn't have the chance to intervene years ago. And that's true with the student, who has the attitude, as well as the parent. And it's just like, you work with, Khristen, you work with athletes, and somebody that's got a poor technique on a ground stroke, it didn't take them 2 hours to get that way. It's not going to be fixed in 2 hours. So I just think time investment is going to be a good thing.
Thank you, Tom. John, what are the problems that need to be fixed in terms of the parents when we're talking about from the before they get to high school and middle school? Kind of what are the behaviors that have developed that we need to address early? What are the buds, the seedlings of it?
That's a good question.
Thank you, that's my job.
Well, and as somebody that tries to ask good questions too, I can certainly appreciate that. But I think, you know, a lot of it unfortunately is social media driven. A lot of it I think is societally driven, and I think a lot of it maybe, you know, in the parent community, it might be peer driven actually too. So it's, you know, so it's like the gentleman just said, we're trying to undo a lot of things that are, you know, when they get to the level where we see it, you know, it's already taken root as a serious problem. So I think just, you know, as a society, societally, fundamentally, we just work hard from a state, you know, from a state perspective. Like, you know, I'm in Tennessee, we have the TSSAA, and I know every other state has their respective federation. So I think from a federation level, I think we just need to really be hammering the messaging to these parents, you know, sports are fun over and over again. Sports are fun. Sports are fun. Sports are fun. Your child is not a meal ticket. Your child is not a golden cow. Your child is not the next LeBron James. And it might even have to be something as direct as that. You know, maybe get an athlete, you know, a famous athlete, and say, hey, I'm somebody. Your kid is not going to be me, but your kid can be wonderful. You know, your kid can do great things through sports. You know, maybe something just as direct and explicit as that. And, you know, if it just resonates with a few of these parents, and maybe other parents with, you know, younger kids coming through the system, you know, kind of see that, you know, maybe that's where it just takes hold and kind of resonates. And I think, you know, I think at this level with a lot of these parents, I think it maybe has to be something, you know, that forceful, that explicit, that clear, and just kind of bang them over the head and say, you know, the reasons a lot of you people are doing this are not the right reasons. Here are what we think are the right reasons, the healthy reasons, the fun reasons, the positive reasons. And like Jennifer was saying, the reason the kids are telling us, you know, why sports, you know, what they get out of sports, you know, that's important too. Let's listen to what the kids have to say too, on top of everything else.
Yeah, I think the kids can't really say it to their parents a lot of times, right? Those parents are so out of control, and they see the mindset. Lauren from Vermont, what experiences and what do you want to see done with parents? I know we've talked about some of the issues that have happened in Vermont.
Sure. One of the biggest things that we're seeing is a lot of misogyny and sexually explicit language towards our female athletes, body shaming remarks. And so what we need to do is clean it up so that our female athletes feel empowered to continue to come out for sports, benefit from all the things that we know are great for young women to learn through sport, and just create the environment for that to happen. And when it's coming from our fan section, it's great. We can have games without fans. We've done it before. We had a basketball team who had 3 games without fans this year, and then when it was coming back, it was with limited attendance of just people that were directly within their family. And those girls reported that it was the best game that they had all year because they could just play.
There you go. Let's open it up for a few questions just to start a discussion. The point of this panel is just to get us started talking about potential solutions. So who here has a comment or a question that we can then explore a little bit? Yes.
So I've heard a little bit, not to put all the blame on youth sports, but I've heard kind of a partnership with youth sports. I'm curious if anybody has any ideas of how we can start that partnership early on so it can become a 12-year problem down the road.
Great question. Did everybody hear that okay? How do we start the partnership with youth and club sports? Alva?
I would say, first of all, you pretty much know the youth sports that actually feed into your schools. And so starting with them and creating that partnership with our high school coaches and our athletic programming, going in and bringing those teams in to the school and trying to understand at that point, getting them involved to kind of see the culture of what high school sports is and how it actually really looks. Sometimes we bring them in, sometimes the homecoming, that kind of thing, but what about when it's not homecoming? What about just an everyday game? Even just come in, maybe watch a practice and then see what the process actually looks like in high school, and then, you know, have maybe some mentorship stuff go on between our high school team and the youth team. Just, you know, a big brother, big sister format. You know, those kind of things that will begin to start nurturing. Then the same thing with the parents. You know, when the kids come in, oftentimes kids a lot of times come without parents. But making the parent also come and participate as well in this collaboration will begin to have parents of high school talking to those parents that are at a youth level and helping them get some understanding, especially those parents that are doing the right thing as we can begin to recreate the culture.
And to kind of playing off that, I think what we don't have now, and especially, I mean, where I am, there's no liaisons between the high school coaching community, administration community, and the club community. So there needs to be better back and forth, you know, just connections, you know, just bridges between those two communities to getting on the same page in terms of expectations, behavior, and things of that nature.
I was just saying, I agree with that. I think if there was some type of role that someone could be a liaison between, you know, and that person can be the buffer for the coaches and then the parents. And then another thing I wanted to add is, if you just model, the coaches, really, it starts with the coaches. The coaches model the behavior. They do not accept bad behavior, and then the parents, you know, like for me, with that one parent, I have to learn how to follow through with my consequences, and then everyone else no one else is gonna give us a hard time because they see that there's consequences. So I think it starts from within, and then you model the behavior. But I think that's a really, really good point, is finding a liaison between the coaches and the parents, and that way the coaches can do their job, and also the coaches need to understand that these parents, it's almost like the coaches cannot be putting their ego and they make it about them, just like the parents make it about them. So the kid is the athlete's the one that's the collateral damage in the middle. So they need to understand it's not about, for the coaches, it's not about winning. For the parents, it's not about getting college scholarship.
That's it, making sure that the goals are lined up and that those goals are what is best for the kids.
I just want to add that I think we also need to look at the big picture and understand the situation. In the club scene, especially in the younger levels, the parents are incredibly involved. They're very much involved in volunteer roles, which can give them a sense of ownership in what is going on. And they're not always prepared for that change that's going to happen once they get into high school. That's not a solution, but it's just important to recognize that. Here we have parents who may have spent the past 10 years in some ways running their kids' program, and they have lost that authority, and they're not quick to cut that off because they're used to being able to quickly make changes, and they have lost that ability. So we got to fix that.
The funny thing is, I will always ask parents, you were, you know, like say they vested when they're in youth sports. Then you get to high school, they don't even come to a game. And then when they come to that one game, you want to have all this to say. You know, be around a little bit more consistently involved, be involved. So I say, so all the work you put in from 5 years old to 14, now you get to high school, you don't come to a game. There's some parents I haven't seen ever. And it's like, so where did your investment really go?
So why were you involved?
So where did your investment really go? You get to the point where your investment really counts, and now you're not there, except when something goes wrong. And you won't fill the paperwork out correctly. Little simple things, you know, that happen, but except when something goes wrong or you don't get playing time, they come back and tell you something, then we hear your mouth. But I don't even know you, we don't have a relationship. So no relationships have been built, you know, among that time frame. And again, when we, you know, you asked the question I wanted to answer, fan engagement, that part I think is major, because when you talk about touch points, the touch points now, because now we have all the electronic ticketing aspect, we know who's coming to the game before they get there. So at this point, we have to start utilizing that email list that you get, because you can look at how many tickets are sold. Okay, now let's send out this messaging. Let's now, you know, begin to really start thinking about not only the parking lot, what do we have any signage that's in the parking lot? You know, because some of you all have great facilities. Some of you just have to get out the car, walk in. You know, it all depends on the size of the facility. So looking at where are all our touch points that we have along a fan's journey and a spectator's journey, and say now we can put a nugget right here, we can drop a nugget right here, and do we utilize people now? Because everything is electronic, so we don't even have people to say, let me scan. Where's the interaction of the cordialness? And then what do you call it? There's something called the power of hello. The power of hello helps people begin to de-escalate and seeing, you know, somebody gonna be disgruntled to you as soon as you say, hey, good morning, good afternoon. Well, have a great day. Hope you be better. And then you can kind of really start to massage that person as they move through your facility. And then by the time they sit down, they might have, you know, relaxed a little bit because there was enough cordialness going on and stroking and trying to say, are you okay? Kind of thing. The check-in piece that we have to do with individuals because everybody's rushing around, you know. That's how I think that can also work with the touch points and giving those nuggets of expectations through that electronic ticketing piece.
Thank you. Thank you all. Because I work in television, we got to end it right on time. So we're done, and it's a good starting point. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Enjoy your next session.